Hello, what's up YouTube photographer Ronix Sweat and Nature. In this tutorial I'll show you my whole retouching and color grading workflow when it comes to editing images in general. So I'll show you how I easily color grade and retouch images, and if at all you are interested in how I do all my workflow, simply hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe if at all you are not yet subscribed to this channel. So as you can see right now, this is Capture One, and those that don't know Capture One, it is a raw processing software that enables us to do more advanced adjustments to images when it comes to editing. So right now, this is my interface, and if at all you'd love yours to look like mine, simply come to Window, Workspace, then come to Migration, and you'll get the adjustments here. So in Capture One, what I do is correcting the lighting and contrast issues regarding the images before I take it to Photoshop. So I'll simply come to my high dynamic range and take the highlights down and do the same for my whites to recover information that may be blown out regarding this image. Then I'll slightly take the contrast, the exposure down to get back more of the information and add a tiny bit of contrast to the image. Then I'll come to my levels and simply add a little bit of the contrast. And right now the image, you can see that we have the before and after option. Before, after, and the image looks correctly exposed. So after doing that, like in Photoshop, Capture One also has layers. So I'll create a new field adjustment here to do the color grading or even out the skin tones of this model. So I'll right click on the plus icon and create a new field adjustment layer. Then I'll scroll all the way down to where it says color editor, and under color editor we'll have basic, advanced, and skin tone. So I just want to create an even skin tone for this model, and if at all I'm to zoom in by pressing Ctrl plus, you can see that we have very many skin tone colors that are falling apart. So I just want to create a uniform skin color for this very model. So I'll just come and get the color picker tool. So I've selected skin tone and I've clicked on the color picker tool. So I'll just zoom in and I choose any color that I feel like the rest of the skin should have been looking like. So I'll just choose a color right here, just from this spot, and you can see it chooses the colors that fall within the selected color range. We have yellows, oranges, reds, and magentas, and below here we have the option that says uniformity. So this is what I tend to do to get uniform skin color. So I'll just take up the uniformity slider, and as I take it up, you can notice that the skin is looking like the area that we selected in this area. So I'll also take up the saturation slider because these two sliders work hand in hand, just like that, until when I feel like the skin is looking better and looking a little bit even. But as you're doing all this, you are going to notice that the skin or the makeup is going to be changing as we are altering or moving these sliders. So look for a sweet spot when the skin is looking better and looking more even. So you can come the amount slider if at all the image is oversaturated as you're moving these sliders under uniformity. You can take down the saturation or you can increase on the saturation. So I'll just decrease on the saturation for mine, just like that. So if at all the image is turning a little bit greenish or reddish, you can change it under the hue slider. So taking this up, it is going to add more greens, and the opposite of green is magenta, which is red. So you can change that depending on your taste and preference. So I'll just add a tiny bit of greens to the image, and you can see now the skin looks better and more even. So after you have done this, I'll just come to my color balance option in Capture One, and in this I'll just simply play around with the colors in the color balance. So you can add the given color to the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights. And for my case, I'll simply first of all handle the highlights right here, and I'll just add this kind of, because I feel like I want to cool down the image a little bit, so I'll just add this kind of bluish feel to the image. So the closer it is to the circumference of the circle, the more intense the color is going to be, and the closer it is to the center, the less intense that color is going to be. So you can move this around and you see the look or the color that you want to go in for depending on the image that you're working on. So for my case, I'll just go within this color range. I think this looks okay. So you can even work on the shadows by adding a given color. So I'll just come the midtone, and for my midtones I just want to warm that up, just like that. I'll just warm it up a little bit more, and I'll just cool down my highlights even a little bit more. So this looks okay, it looks great, but it has changed the color of the lipstick. So I'll just come to this adjustment layer and get the eraser tool right here in Capture One, and simply reduce on the size of the eraser tool by using the bracket keys, and I'll simply erase the color grading from affecting the lipstick or the lips of the model. So if at all you don't want a given color to affect, remember we created a new field adjustment layer, so this is going to be eliminating the color from those areas. So right now we are done processing the image in Capture One, so we are going to take it to Photoshop, but I feel like we are lacking a little bit of the contrast and the image slightly looks overexposed. So I'll just take down the exposure a little bit more, just a little bit, and add some contrast. So this is okay. So we're just going to take the image to Photoshop to do a skin retouching. So just come to image and come to edit with and choose Photoshop. So I prefer it to be as a TIFF, uncompressed, 300 pixels per inch, and ICC profile Adobe RGB 98 because this is supported by Photoshop, and I prefer 16-bit. And I'll just come to edit variants to take the image to Photoshop to do the skin retouching and the final adjustments regarding skin retouching, eye whitening, and even the cropping itself. So in Photoshop we're going to be learning skin retouching using frequency separation. Those that don't know frequency separation, it is a skin retouching technique that divides the image into the high frequency layer and the low frequency layer. In the high frequency layer we have our textures, and in the low frequency layer we have our colors. So I'm just going to cancel this. So like I said, in the high frequency layer we have our textures, and in the low frequency layer we have our colors. So I'm just going to come back, edit with. So since the image was already having an XMP file, that is why it was not able to open into Photoshop. So like I said, frequency separation, so when we are working on those layers, we usually want to perfect the colors alone and the textures alone. So when we combine both the colors and the textures, we end up with a nicely retouched image at the end of the process. So right now we are in Photoshop and the image is going to load right here. So I just come to reset this. So this is the image from Capture One, so I'm just going to open it to Photoshop. So like I said, this is the TIFF file. So in Photoshop the very first thing is cropping the image. So I'll just get the crop tool and change it to 4:5 because I prefer to post the images on Instagram. So just crop it in a little bit more, just like that. And after making sure that I've cropped it right, hit enter. And after doing that, so cropping this first thing I tend to do when it comes to Photoshop. So after cropping it, the next thing is going to be retouching and creating the frequency separation layers. So create two layers by coming the background layer and pressing Ctrl J twice, and rename this layer to low frequency, and the upper layer is going to be the high frequency because it is the upper layer, high frequency. So after doing this, hide the high frequency layer and select the low frequency layer, and after selecting it, simply come to filter and come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So this is the most important step when it comes to frequency separation. So at this point we have to determine the amount of skin textures that we want to remain with in the final retouched image. So just look for an area that has more skin textures than the rest of the skin, which is this area. So for your image, just look for that area that has more skin textures than the rest of the skin, and come to the radius. Remember, this is the most important step, so you have to pay maximum attention on this step. So just come to the radius and start taking up the radius slider up to a point when these textures are just starting to disappear. So they have to just start disappearing and don't completely lose them out. So you can still notice where they were, but you can't still clearly see them. So that is the sweetest spot and the textures that you're going to be remaining with in the final retouched image. And after that, simply come and click OK, and it's going to make the image look a little bit blurry. So you're going to come to the high frequency layer and now select it and activate it. Then come to image and come down to apply image. So when you come to apply image, the source is going to be the name of the image. The layer, select low frequency layer, the channel has to be RGB. And for 16-bit image, the blend is going to be add. The scale is to offset 0, opacity at 100%. Make sure you turn on the invert option. Preserve transparency and mask and check, and you'll see the textures on this gray kind of layer. Then if at all you're working with an 8-bit image, the blending has to be subtract. The scale is to offset 128 and the invert is not turned on, and you'll have the same results. So for mine, it is a 16-bit image, so I'll just turn on the invert option. The scale is to offset 0 and simply click OK. So after I have done this, I'll simply come to the blend mode and change it from normal and change it all the way down to linear light. And I'll put these two in a group by selecting both and pressing Ctrl G or Command G on the keyboard. Then you can rename that to frequency separation, just like that. And after doing that, simply open up the frequency separation group and come to the low frequency layer and hide the high frequency layer. Then you're going to be using the mixer brush tool to work or fine tune the skin tones first. So come the brushes, right click and get the mixer brush tool, and these are the settings for the mixer brush tool. And whichever tool that you select in Photoshop, the settings for that tool are always going to be on top here. So just come and make sure clean brush is selected and hardness set to 0 and soft round brush selected. So this option that says clean the brush after each and every stroke has been selected, because as we are working on the skin tones, we want the skin or the brush to be automatically clean, because skin tones usually have different colors and we don't want to drag color from one area to another. And the weight is 9%, load 75, mix at 90, and the flow of 100%. So after doing that, simply come, make sure that sample all layers is not turned on, and with the high frequency layer hidden and selected on the low frequency layer, we are going to be using the mixer brush tool to edit. So if at all your brush is showing a plus icon, simply press the caps lock key to activate that plus icon to get the default brush. And if at all you have to reduce or increase on the size of the mixer brush tool, you can use the open and close brackets on the keyboard. So as we are going to be working on the image, you have to mix colors that are looking alike to blend them and create a smooth transition between those colors. So how to use the mixer brush tool? We left click and drag a given color, and we make sure that we are remaining within the borders or the boundaries of that given color, so that we can blend and create a nice transition. So if at all we have a color that is existing where it shouldn't be, we mix it to be part of the predominant color, just like that. And you have to move the mixer brush tool in the direction or the way a given area is shaped, so that you can keep and maintain the originality of the shape of that given area. So I'll just come and paint just like that. So we had some kind of dark areas, so I've blended them to be part of the highlight area, because that is the predominant color within that area. So I'll just be doing this. So when it comes to the cheek area, move it in this direction, because the cheek is moving in the same direction, so that you can maintain the original shape of the model's face. So I'll be doing this, and I'll forward this so that this is not a very long tutorial. And the other thing, always make sure to retouch at a distance, because when you are retouching at a distance, you want the image to be seen, and you can easily see or identify the uneven skin tone transitions in the image, so that you can perfect and fine tune them, because you can now clearly see what you're trying to work on or perfect at a distance. And it also helps you retouch faster and save a lot of time when you're trying to retouch, because in that way you're going to be retouching at a distance and covering a very big space within a short period of time. So I'm just going to be doing this. And now you can see the image looks a little bit plastic because we turned off the texture layer. So when you come and turn on the texture layer, you can start, we still have the original textures that were part of the image. So you can see the before and after for just using the mixer brush tool, and we have now retained the original skin textures that were part of this very image. So that's the before and after. So after doing the mixer brush tool, we are going to be incorporating some technique that is going to refine the areas that we may have missed out when we are using the mixer brush tool to blend the skin tone even better. So just come and get the lasso tool and make sure it is in new selection mode. The feathering has to be 22 pixels, because we want the edges of the selection to be as smooth as possible, and we don't want those ugly lines left as a result of sharp edges. So just come left click and select just like that. So you have to keep away from the edges of the image or even selecting the hair. So leave a reasonable distance between the skin and the hair or even the edges of the photo. So just come to filter and come to blend, come down to Gaussian blur, and you can notice that it brings back the original radius we had for our frequency separation. So simply take that radius up the point when you're getting a nice texture for your image. So at around 20, that is when I'm getting a natural and better and realistic skin texture for this image, and stop right there, and that is going to be natural enough. So if at all you don't have the time to do the guesswork, simply multiply the radius that you had for your image by 3. So type in that value. So for my case I use 7, so 7 by 3 is 21. I'll just delete 7 and type in 21, and you can see that we have better or a real skin texture. So after doing that, we are going to come and now perfect this by coming and selecting. So to deselect a given area, just click out from the selection and come and get a new selection. Right click on that selection and apply the Gaussian blur. If at all it is too much, right click on the selection and come to fade Gaussian blur and reduce on the opacity of that given effect on that area. So that is how to use this lasso tool. So I'm just going to be doing this. So I only apply this technique on the face because the other areas don't have the same skin texture like we do on the face. So I'm just going to be doing this on the nose. So you can see I'm keeping my selections the way a given area is shaped, so that I don't change or alter the original shape of the model's face, and I'm keeping within the color areas. So when it comes to the highlight, I don't select the highlight of the nose because that is going to make the nose look a little bit flat. So I have to select the dark areas alone and avoid the brightest area of the nose. So after doing that, we are now done working on the skin tones, and that's the before after. So it is time to remove the textures or the pimples and the blemishes. So to remove pimples and blemishes, select the blemish or the texture layer, which is the high frequency layer, and come and get the clone stamp tool and make sure the hardness is 0, mode is normal, opacity and the flat 100%. Sample has to be on current layer because we want to work with the layer that contains the textures, which is the currently selected layer right here. We are going to zoom into the image all the way because we want to see the blemishes that we are removing better. Reduce on the size by using the bracket keys on the keyboard. And how to remove a blemish, hold down the option key on the keyboard, or you can use the alternate key on the keyboard. And so you hold it down, left click on an area that is near the blemish. So make sure the size of the clone stamp tool is slightly bigger than the blemish. Alternate or the option key, left click on a clean area near the blemish and simply left click over the blemish after releasing the alternate key. So I'm just going to be doing this to remove the blemishes, and let me just forward this. Hello, welcome back, and now you can start to have removed the blemishes from this very image, and this is the before and the after for the overall skin retouching and the color correction or even the color grading capture. And so next is going to be the final touches on this image, which involve eye whitening and also the final color grading process. So we are going to come and first of all create a stamp visible by pressing Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard. So if at all you're using Windows, simply use Shift Alternate Control E. Then if at all you're using Mac, it is Shift Option Command E on the keyboard to create a stamp visible layer, and come right here to filter, camera raw filter. And what I do basically within this is simply boost up the skin tones of this model by coming to the color mixer tool and selecting luminous and simply selecting the oranges and simply darkening the oranges to get a more richer skin tone, just like that, and simply click OK to open the image back to Photoshop. And you can see it has added contrast to the skin of the model. Then come and create a hue and saturation adjustment layer and come and select the reds and come to the lightness of the reds and simply take that down, and this looks okay. Then I'll create one more adjustment layer, which is the black and white adjustment layer right here, and change the blend mode to multiply to darken the image and come and take that down to boost up the contrast of this image, and I'll leave the opacity to around 6%. So the last thing I'll do is simply doing the eye whitening. So just come and create one more hue and saturation adjustment layer, and come to the saturation and take it all the way down to -67, and press Ctrl I on the keyboard to invert the effect. For Mac it is Command I. Then come and get the brush tool and make sure the brush tool is selected, and soft round brush, the hardness is 0 and soft round is selected, opacity and the flat 100%. Make sure that you have black and white on these color swatches, or you can switch between black and white by using X on the keyboard and using white, a white brush, meaning the white is the foreground color. We are going to zoom into the image and now paint on the white area of the eye to reveal our effect of the whitening of the eye, just like that. So this is how I do whiten eyes and teeth in Photoshop for those interested in this. So you can rewind if at all I've gone a little bit fast about the eye whitening. So right now we are done whitening the eyes, and anything is saving the image after retouching and color grading it. So you can see this is the before after. So in order to save the image, simply come right here to File, Export, and come to Export as well. So if at all you have been having issues regarding your images changing color after you have been able to save them in Photoshop, this is the best way to save your images. So come and make sure the file, the format is set to JPEG, quality at 100%. Image size, make sure you change the resample to bicubic sharper. And if at all you don't want the image to change in color after saving it, make sure you select convert to sRGB and also embed color profile. So after doing these two, it means you have embedded the colors that you have been able to alter or embed into the image when you are retouching color grading it. So these are going to be supported by most social media platforms. So after doing that and the image is done loading in the preview window, simply click on export right here and choose a location where you want to save the image. So this is it for today's video, and if at all you have learned a thing or two from this video, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe this channel. If at all you have been watching and you're not subscribed to this channel, Ronis from Ronis Photography, thank you for watching and see you in more amazing tutorials, and don't forget to keep practicing and also keep creating.